Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another speed review here of SK Telecom T1 versus KSV eSports. This time around it is going to be game 2. Last time it was game 1, so I highly suggest that you check out that video that I made earlier this week about game 1. But for now, we'll get through this. It's going to be a speed review, which means that it's going to be on 1.5 in terms of speed, and therefore it'll go a little bit quicker. So, SK Telecom, they are one game up against KSV, who they won over in the first game of today. And SK Telecom, they are using Foul and Blossom. It's not very often that we've seen these guys. It is something new for SK Telecom to use both these guys in the same game. And they've succeeded, so it worked out really well. Blossom were able to play very aggressive here in game 1, where he played a German. And SK Telecom, they more or less looked for a lot of dives. They had a Tarek in the bottom side alongside a Varus. They had a Jarvan and a Galio, respectively, in the jungle and the mid lane. It worked out really well. They were able to dive a lot. They had a good front line for Bang, and with his on-hit builds, he was able to deal a lot of damage. This is why we're seeing KSV ban out the Galio and SKT ban out the Varus, because they know that on the side of KSV, Ruler loves to play Varus, and the Galio was just a big problem for SK Telecom in the for KSV in the first game, so obviously they want to ban it away. However, now with Sejuani being left open, obviously that means that SK Telecom, they have to pick that up, and KSV will get their hands on the Jarvan, which is going to be interesting to see how it works out, because KSV, they have swapped in Ambition, which means that he's been able to watch how Blossom plays these games, and therefore might be able to really work around Blossom's playstyle and shut him down from the get-go, which was something that Haru simply wasn't able to do in the last game. Now, SK Telecom picking up the Kassadin. Kassadin has been Faker's go-to pick in games where he hasn't been 100% certain of the matchup, I guess, but also his go-to pick against the Zoe. So in this case, Kassadin versus Zoe works in that way that Zoe, she can push in quite a lot in the mid lane, but she doesn't pressure the Kassadin as much as one would like to pressure Kassadin, and therefore Kassadin is able to scale up fairly efficiently in this lane against the Zoe. So Faker uses this lane as a way to get to that level 14, 16 stuff, where he will have 3 items at least on the Faker on the Kassadin when he can start to assassinate people. Tarek is still left open. It has been a pick that Wolf has been favoring quite a lot, and after all, you have Foul, who is a rookie, so it would be nice to get a counter matchup in for him. You do still have a Maokai open. Ornn is also a possibility, something that would work actually well with KSV's comp, because they could then get him up to the top side and make it so the Ambition would have a clear lane to gank. And with the roaming powers of the Zoe, it would work really well. Now, Foul, however, is known to be a Trundle player. His name, if I remember correctly, is actually I pick Trundle. So Trundle is an amazing pick here for the Foul, and obviously they locked that in. So looking at the two compositions, on KSV side we have a very traditional composition. They have tank in the top side, booster in the jungle, mid lane mage, they have AD carry, and obviously a tank in the bottom side as well. What their win condition is, their win condition, it is that they would love to play around the mid lane. If they can have Crown push in the mid lane and roam out, then he would be a catalyst for a successive game for KSV, because he would then be able to affect other lanes. And if Crown is able to control the mid lane and push Faker in, Faker wouldn't be able to really do anything to Crown if he does so. You would also have Core JJ, who can roam around. If he picks the Unsealed Spellbook, would be able to pick up the TP. He also has the Stand United, so he can work together with Ambition to play off the control that Crown has in the mid lane. For SK Telecom, however, the way that they win the early game, it is by trying to have Blossom go into the jungle of Ambition, place down Vision. Same goes for Wolf. If they can have control over Ambition, know where he is, then they will be able to try and scale up, which is essentially what they're doing. Their mid game, it all consists of Fall and a Bang once he gets the Trinity Force and the Mana Moon. But they have to get to that point first. They're not strong here in the early game, and they will need a few items before they will become active. Before they will become active and online in this game. But that is gained through control over Ambition and trying to neutralize the mid lane. So I'm looking forward to seeing how Crown and Faker will play this game, because my guess is that we're still on patch 8.2, by the way. So Unsealed Spellbook is probably the way to go for these two mid laners. Also considering that Faker has the heal and Crown has the ignite, means that they will most likely want to swap those out, as they aren't the best summoner spells for a mid laner. So talking about Unsealed Spellbook, you can always go for the Minion Dematerializer. And the Minion Dematerializer would be good to have here in this game for both Faker and Crown. For Faker, it would allow him to neutralize some of the pushing power coming in from Crown. For Crown, it would allow him to push in more efficiently against Faker, but also because he gets that extra, if I remember correctly, yes, 6% extra damage to a certain type of minion. It would also allow him to become a better wave clear later on. Something that Faker doesn't exactly necessarily need, but something that will be very good to have for Crown. So right off the bat, nobody of them have the Minion Dematerializer. You now know why I would like to see it and why I think that it would have been very effective for them to have. So I wouldn't say that it's very wasted to have talked about it, but it just turns around the idea. So it doesn't turn around, it just helps to mention the idea of what these two laners are going for and why mid lane control is so deadly and something that these two teams, they need to strive for. So instead, we now have Crown with an ignite on Zoe's, which means that he will be able to threaten some kills against Faker if Faker pushes a little bit too far. On this Kassadin, you want to try and scale as much as possible, so Faker will not look to fight here in the early game, but instead will just look to scale up. Without him having the ignite, he will have to be very careful and will have to succeed, to give over a lot of this lane control and lane power to Crown, who does have that ignite to work with, which obviously bothers Faker quite a lot. But going back to KSV, which I talked about their idea of playing the early game is to try and get control through the mid lane and then perhaps go up to the top side. You have Ruler and Core JJ, and they are a very safe lane. You have the Stand United at level 6, but also they both have a dash to get away. So if you can push in the mid lane, which is what Crown is doing right now, then you can go up to the top side where Kuve is constantly pushing in. Doing so now without a ward, however, which is very interesting. I'm wondering, will he die? He probably will, yeah. So he dies right there. That's interesting. He doesn't have any wards to work with. He even have his trinket is not on cooldown. So he should have pushed in. So he should have warded up. I assume that he thought that he would be safe because of them having that river control through the Skull Crab. Just didn't have it that. But now this is a problem for KSV. Remember we talked about how they want to gain control through the mid lane. Now, obviously, Kuve dying is a problem because that means that they can't roam up to the top side and that Ambition loses a little bit of ways to play the game. It isn't the biggest problem. It's only a kill. It's only 300 gold. It could be much worse, and they went over to Blossom, so it's not like it's going to be Foul, who will be this big pusher in the top side on Trundle with Tiamat or Ravenous Hydra already being completed at 10 minutes or so. It's not that what I'm talking about, but it's just the idea of losing what could have been possible momentum for KSV, which is a problem. But it only means that now Blossom will have a Rubite Crystal, so he will be able to force fights instead, which will then be in his favor in terms of health, which isn't exactly it isn't something that KSV would believe of. It's not in the interest of KSV. That's what I'm trying to say. So for now, what you should look at, what you really need to notice right here, is that KSV, they now know that, well, shit, Blossom ganked topside. And he came through the tri-bush. We need to play his vision. I love how Ambition thought, well, I need to gain some vision, so I'm going to place a ward deep in the jungle, one in the tri-bush, and one in the river. And then a pink ward in the mid lane bush as well. So there's no way that Blossom will find anything in the top side right now. It's totally lit up, and that means Foul is on his own. That's fine, because Riftail hasn't spawned yet, so it could be much worse for SK Telecom. And it also works out well, I guess, most likely here, because they can blow a flash on Core JJ. They worked up such a big wave right here, so they might have been able to force a flash from Core JJ. Yeah, obviously right there they do get that flash, so it works out extremely well for SK Telecom to not be able to. So they succeed in playing around the vision that was in the top side. And with the Riftail, though, as I said, not being up, there's no real reason for SK Telecom to go up to the top side anyways. It's not like they would be unhappy about losing a Cloud Drake either. But a Riftail would be very irritating towards SK Telecom, because they need to have as many towers as possible, because if they can have towers, well, then they can also slow down this game. KSV, if they have towers, then they have gold, and if they have gold, well, then they're able to force things which SK Telecom are not interested in, because then that would mean that they lose out on possible scaling. So look here, what do we have? We have Triumph, Takedown to restore 12% of your missing health, grant additional 25 gold, and Tenacity. Okay, so going for a split push, more bruiser team fight idea is what Foul is going for with his 2 precision runes. He wants to be able to split push and sustain through that split push, because if he gets someone taken down, then he will obviously get health back, but also because of the tenacity will help very much against Ornn to get out of his stuns as possible. I guess it is stuns as fast as possible, because of obviously tenacity working very well against crowd control. Right now, Blossom is doing a good job as well. Remember, we talked about him having to try and get knowledge of where Ambition is. That's what he's doing. He has placed 2 wards down in the depths of the bottom side jungle of KSV. He also has the skull. I just went into puberty there right now. He also has the skull crab around the Drake. So now he will also have knowledge of Ambition trying to go down to the bottom side. All in all, I would say a very good early game for SK Telecom as of now. Only behind 3,000 gold, mainly in the mid lane, but they're scaling up. Faker is just about to hit his Rod of Ages. Doesn't go for a Tear of the Goddess, but having the Rod of Ages nearly 10 minutes into the game is very successful. Means that he can stack it up around 20 minutes and already go right from there. be very strong as well. Remember, all that Kazan is about is having a few items, and if he has the few items already here, sorry, the faster he can get the few items, the better. So for Faker to have that Rod of Ages nearly 10 minutes into the game is incredible. So the Vision War is something that Ambition is also doing fairly well. Looking at how he manages to place Vision in the bottom side jungle of SK Telecom, I really like this decision. I think it's also smart of him, Ambition that is, to think of, well, Faker will not be able to respond, Bang will not be able to respond, so I can actually place the Vision and try to threaten around the Cloud Drake. It's not what I would have preferred myself. I would much rather have a Rifthold with the composition that KSV have, but they have to play around their strong side, and their strong side, that is the bottom side where they have a Shen and a Tristana. However, this is very reckless from SK Telecom. So right here, remember SK Telecom. Faker wants to scale up, has an Ignite now, so he's not exactly in the position to teleport in. Wolf has teleport, but he doesn't have the Stand United, which JJ has, so that means that they have better team fighting power. Bang is scaling up, and Bang is together with Wolf. So Fall is, in theory, their only real damage at this point, and he doesn't even have any items. Whereas KSV, they have Call of the Forge God coming from Kuve, you have Ambition, who is good right now on this Jarvan. You have Crown, who will have more sustained damage than anyone, more or less, on SK Telecom, because, well, that's Zoe. And you have Tristana. She's not going to be able to be here, but she will be able to push the bottom side where you force Wolf and Bang to be. So SK Telecom, they have to sneak this Rifthold if they want to, but that's not going to be very easy to do so. But it's a good thing that SK Telecom, they managed to get that Stand United instead up to the top side. Not quite sure how Kuve did not see Blossom there, or at least went so reckless as to push forward, because you knew that Blossom obviously had to be somewhere in the top side. And instead you just push up. I think this is very interesting from Blossom. So that's something I talked about in the last VOD review, that Blossom and Fall, they bring a certain type of uncertainness to the matchup, because they are rookies and they aren't exactly people who are used to playing the way that pros usually play. Yes, of course they are playing the scrims, but that's not the same as playing on stage. So with Blossom going back up to the top side, taking that Rifthold immediately after gaining top side and having been spotted multiple times, I think that's very cheeky, but it's also a very nice decision. It's not something you would see very often, because of junglers usually predicting that, well, there's probably Vision on me. Fall goes down in the top side. Shouldn't have went down there. You've just flashed away from the Call of the Forge God. Should have backed up. So backed off faster. You didn't even have your subjugate. So I wouldn't say that Fall played it good right there. Should have just been backing off and instead just made a mistake. 11 minutes into the game, Faker completed his Rod of Ages. Let's see this fight. Yeah, not certain what SK Telecom were thinking of doing there. It's like they didn't have, I assume that they didn't have the timer on KorjiDay's teleport. Should have known that it probably wasn't on cooldown, because you can always see teleports on the map. But instead they are caught off guard right there, and Blossom is forced to flash. Not the prettiest of decisions from SK Telecom, but it does somewhat force KSV to slow the game down, because of Crown also being taken low and being forced to go back. So look here, Fall is actually backing off, but in a very weird position. Should have perhaps went a little bit further back so that he wouldn't be in a position to get collapsed on. I think that would have been the best choice. After all, there's not a very long cooldown on Call of the Forge God either. So I think that just don't be cheeky at that position. And don't allow KSV to be in a position where he can get a kill on you. KSV on the Ornn has dealt so much damage already. Nearly as much as Bang, but that's also pretty impressive that Bang has been able to deal nearly 6,000 damage on an Ezreal by the 15-minute mark. Considering that he's an Ezreal and he wants to scale up. Dealing so much damage, that is really impressive in my opinion. Oh wait, when did KSV get the tower in the mid lane? I talked about how towers would allow KSV to control the tempo of the game, so with them also getting to mid lane, and the mid lane being one of the best towers to get control of, they now have an incredible amount of they have a possibility to create a lot of momentum. Rift Held coming off of being used right there. Not the best position that you could want to use a Rift Held on. Blossom just perhaps forgetting all about the timer on that thing. One thing that I find interesting right there, are we about to see a fight? Let me hold on. No. Okay, so one thing that I find interesting is that Ruler has built a static ship as his first item. And that is something that I've seen more and more people do. What I find interesting is the fact that on a Tristana, you already have so much pushing power. Now with the static shift as well, you get even more pushing power. And static shift is also a very good immediate power spike. So you do get a lot of power right here in the mid game to work with because of that item that you've just bought, the static shift. Instead of slowly going upwards in terms of power with you going for an Infinity Edge first. I like the decision. I think it's very good. It's a very mid game centered decision to go for the static shift. And well, KSV, they are looking towards the mid game. So just getting that power right here right now does mean that they do get a little bit more pushing power that they can play with, which will come in handy for KSV as they are looking to push down towers. So I like that decision. I don't think it's bad at all. Faker is also scaling up in this game. Nearly has the fully stacked Rod of Ages, and is on the way to get that Lich Bane as well. So it's all looking good for Faker. Like in the last game, Blossom is putting so much priority on ganking. And look at... Okay, so you didn't see that at all. Let me go back real quick. So, let me get the graph. Please. There we go. Okay, so Blossom is focusing so much on being up in the top side. Not focusing at all in the bottom side. And I think that's smart. Because you have to keep in mind that Sejuani, her... passive, sorry, not her passive, her I always forget the name of that ability. Her stun thing, it's called, no, I can't remember it. Anyways, her stun, it procs and stacks off of melee attacks, so I think it's very smart to go so much towards the top side, but also because of Blossom and Fall. Because of Fall being the early game damage for SK Telecom and the mid game damage, mainly because of him going for Ravenous Hydra. Very smart for him to gank so much towards topside and make sure that Fall will be able to rotate into the mid game as best as possible. But he's just getting very beaten by KSV. Look at KSV's CS, he's over 60 CS ahead. Oh, Fall, that's not good at all, SK Telecom. I would not be happy about that. At least for SK Telecom, they do have a Kassadin and an Ezreal that are well in this game. They are fairly farmed, just their mid game, early game player, champion, I would say. Thal, the one that was supposed to be not a trap. He was supposed to be the one that has to attract attention for KSV. I can't quite remember the word in English. He was supposed to attract attention of KSV. He did so very successfully. He was ganked one time, if I remember correctly. That's not what I'm talking about, but there was a lot of focus on the top side coming from Ambition to make it so that KSV would have the best possible lane. And they were successful in getting that lane for KSV because he is so far ahead right now, as you can see. Ambition going down right here. So KSV never flashed in. Sorry, teleported in. Sorry, not flashed. Of course. Didn't teleport in. That's interesting because that meant that they weren't able to have a front line there. And against a very... Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so against some very consistent damage which SK Telecom have, they need to have that front line of KSV, especially because KSV is so far ahead. However, Ambition dead, SK Telecom, they go towards the Baron. Now, we've talked so much about them being late game skilling. This is so interesting from SK Telecom. They just brute force this down. And they're going to be able to get out of it as well. So, how many do they get? They lose a Faker, but they get a 2-for-2 trade, but they get the Baron. Very, very interesting decision from SK Telecom to just brute force that Baron down. Didn't even think about, didn't even have a second thought about not going for that Baron. They just went there as soon as the call was made, and they got the Baron. Now they want to punish them for taking the Infernal Drake. So another Drake will go over to KSV, but they lose the Baron to SK Telecom, and SK Telecom, this is so good for them. Look here. So they just immediately go up there. No jungler from KSV, so there's nothing that KSV can do in terms of not get the smite. And a really good hold from Wolf as well. To just make sure that, well, yes, the players from KSV will be there to deal damage, but SK Telecom, they will take no damage. Smart divine intervention, if I remember correctly, then that's what it's called. But now SK Telecom 1 minute 40 seconds on this Baron. They don't exactly need to get something off of this. It would be nice to push down towers and at least get the mid lane tower. But what they get the most out of this is that they deny it away from KSV, and they buy themselves more time to scale up. So it's incredibly good for SK Telecom to just have this buff in its own because of the way that it buys time for them to scale up in this game and become those late game monsters that they're looking to be. At least Faker out on the sideline getting so much time for himself, like just 2.5 minutes of just free farm for Faker is incredible because of it allowing him to, well, get to that point where he can have so much damage on this Kassadin. The free items that we talked about. Fully stacked Rod of Ages, now also with a Lich Bane, is very far ahead. A lot of damage being dealt by Bang as well. Still just racing out of here with all of his damage. But nonetheless, for SK Telecom, they really have a tight rope around KSV at this point. Because KSV, yes, you have Ruler who has 2.5 items, but Bang has 3 items. You have 2 items on Faker, and those 2 guys combined will just be able to deal more damage than the entirety of KSV. Crown, not exactly ahead either, had to go very defensive in terms of itemization, so he's also in a fairly bad spot. KSV really faltering a little bit here against SK Telecom, who are in control of this car and are just looking to try and drive it into the base of KSV as soon as possible. It's not good for KSV at all to be behind in terms of gold here against SK Telecom, but SK Telecom, they also have to play smart. Like right there, you don't want to do that at all. Fall has no teleport. Kuve has teleport, so there's a teleport advantage on KSV, which SK Telecom, they do have to respect. And SK Telecom, they have to play around Bang. And play around Bang in the hope to get towers too. Because Fall is pushing up all the time in the top side. Kuve is not exactly able to deal with Fall. Yes, you can keep him off the towers, but he will constantly push onto your towers. Sorry, your tower in the top side. So you don't and you don't want that, of course, because if you can push onto a tower, then he will be able to create a momentum for SK Telecom, which is exactly the opposite of what KSV they want. But now, another Infernal Drake is about to spawn. You have Fallam on top side who has the teleport, but there will be a man advantage around this Drake for KSV. And Fall is not exactly a frontline. At this point, he's very squishy, with only the Frozen Heart being completed as his tank item. So an Infernal Drake would go down really fast, especially now with Ruler Ambition being on it. And if Fall succeeds in teleporting in, then it will mainly be to get that Supplicate down. So look here at these two fights. This is how it will go out, most likely. You have Faker who will look to go towards the backside. Bang will look to just deal a lot of damage with a few auto attacks, with his Mystic Shots as well. For KSV, they need this Drake, they need it fast, and then they need to get out. You have Call of the Forge God as your disengage, but you don't want to go up in a direct fight against SK Telecom unless Crown can find a nice sleepy bubble trouble. So yeah, disengage coming in from KSV. Call of the Forge God coming in, landing on 3 people. That's really smart. Could have been a better disengage. I would say for KSV, they lose a lot of that. They do get the Infernal Drake, but they could have disengaged better, I would say. Jump over the back pit of the Drake instead. Use the Call of the Forge God to just knock up SK Telecom. Because of this, you lose another Baron, which is not what you want at all for KSV. It would have worked so much better if they could have just been able to perhaps just stall SK Telecom down there. I think it's good that KSV, they get this Infernal Drake, obviously, because they are against a late game scaling team. So right here, okay, never mind what I said about jumping over the Dragon Pit. They are in a bad position, most of them. Anyways, you have Fallen Faker coming in and cutting off that escape route. So Kuve and Ruler, sorry, not Kuve, Crown, and KSV, they are in the biggest trouble. Right here, I would say use your flash on Kuve, use the Call of the Forge God, then just ditch KSV. He's not going to be able to come out of this alive. But the Call of the Forge God is just so late. And then Ambition, for some reason, engages again. And KSV, they try to fight. And I just don't want to see that. You can't fight at this point. You just got the Infernal Drake. You're very low. Just back off. And because of this, you lose the Baron. Another Baron over to a late game scaling team fight composition from SK Telecom. Now Faker having more or less 3.5 items. You have Bang, who you're not going to be able to touch because he has the Quicksilver Sash. Fall is a huge split pusher problem as well. And Blossom is just too big of a front line for you to ignore. And Ruler is forced to go for a Last Wish, but that's not a problem at all. It's just that Crown will not be there to put down additional damage, if you can put it that way. He will not be able to supplement Ruler's damage. You see, Crown getting caught off obviously isn't working out at all either. But Crown on this, the story in itself works really well if you are ahead. It also works well if you're even, but it doesn't work well when you're behind. And SK Telecom, they're just that far ahead that Sorry is behind. But that's one inhibitor going down. KSV not really able to defend it against this at all. Like, you're against bound up minions, and you're getting punched from all sides of your base. And even then, you're not really trying to engage. I would say KSV should probably try to engage there. You had the Call of the Forge God, and with some nice positioning from Ruler, then we might have been able to see something miraculous come out for KSV. But it was a very slim chance. And off of this, SK Telecom, they should be able to end. Like, you have all 3 inhibitors down. Ruler is the only one that you really have to watch out for in this game as of now. Your carries are stronger than their carries. Holy, Faker even went for, sorry about that swear word by the way. Faker even went for a Rabadon's death cap. So he's incredibly far ahead in this game. Sorry, we'll just, yes, he's ahead. That's just a buzzword. He is in such a good position that now with this Rabadon's death cap, his AP will just be so much higher. Which is a problem, of course, for KSV. You're against late game scaling. He has a Rabadon's death cap, 4 items, 34 minutes into the game. That's not good at all. And SK Telecom, they should have no problem ending here. Like, even if a team fight will not do it, your minions will just slowly push in. Faker even being allowed to kill Ruler. There's nothing that you can do when your biggest carry gets assassinated by Faker in the backside on a Kassadin. Well, then the game is just over. So, well played, actually, by SK Telecom. I would say not the cleanest of games, but the way that they were able to do it was very nice. That they were able to look towards the top side where they played around Fall. They weren't able to get Fall that far ahead, but they didn't exactly lose either because of Fall. Fall being able to stay fairly even and become that split pushing threat, but also a very nice decision by SK Telecom in the mid game to go for that Baron without a doubt. But that's another VOD review, so thank you all for watching. Remember, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Go follow, like, subscribe, whatever you do on those social medias, and you can, of course, find out what I'm doing when I'm not uploading videos on YouTube. So talk to you guys later.